In this episode, I speak with Samantha Bulloch from the Alchemist Tree in Eastern Australia. We talk about her favorite flower essence and essential oil allies for all issues, sex, and money, along with her favorite flowers and nourishing foods, and how to anchor plant medicine into your daily rituals. Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. It reminds me of a story of this woman who wrote to me. She actually was a business coach of mine years ago, and then I reconnected with her last December when we opened this building. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't known that her husband had died. Yeah. And so it was just like a big woof, wow. And it was 2 months had passed only since her husband had died. And then fast forward to the summer, and I was in Asia, and I was having this experience in Taipei that was, I was sitting in a Thai restaurant, and something happened at a table next to me that just like this, it just was like tears. Sometimes when you get that really fierce, strong emotion and you don't really know where it's coming from. Yeah. So you kind of go to the bathroom and like spend 10 minutes in the bathroom just like letting it pass. Yeah. So you can go back to dinner. And so I wrote an email just sharing that with people about my experience and talked about a couple different flowers that would help. And so she started working with Self-Heal, and she sent me the most beautiful, touching email when I was in Taiwan about how she worked with Self-Heal flower, and then like within days after being, for 8 or 9 months coming through that whole, like trying to come to grips with not having her husband and his illness and him leaving and what's she going to do in her life now. She said, my God, it's like in a few days, I feel like, not just like just getting by, but now like, what am I going to do? Like thriving, like this is my life. Like this is my one grand, precious life. Like it was almost like everything just opened up for her in that moment. And just like you say, it just makes you cry. It's like, we've been working with flower essences for how many decades? And yet, like every single story is just like, it brings you to your knees. It's like, how is this even possible? Yeah. Right? How is this even possible?
And they're everywhere every day.
And that a particular flower could work in 50 different ways for 50 individuals for 50 different situations.
Yeah. It's such a gift. I'm so glad that you mentioned Self-Heal because it's one of the foundational essences. It would go in 80% of my scripts. Because for me, Self-Heal opens the possibility of your own deepest inner wisdom, your deepest layer and level of innate healing potential that comes from your inside, from your own sovereign source divinity and sacred space. It allows you to access the part of you that is absolutely pristine, pure, living, loving light. And it helps you to actually open that up and to access your own capacity to heal at your own pace in the way that's perfect for you, at the perfect rate, like in the perfect way. And that's what you were alluding to before, that you could give one flower essence to 100 people and they will all have their own journey with that essence. There will be a universal principle. There will be a universal theme that they will all be able to articulate, but there will be something completely unique and individual for each one of them.
It's so fun to talk to you because
I know.
It's like we each have our different languages, and yet it's like pushing the envelope and innovative qualities of the flower essence world. It's like so often you hear of Self-Heal as like, that's the one for, people with chronic illness and it gives them the ability to survive and thrive. And then when I started working with it, I was like, like, yes. But for me, what I'm seeing is like, it's a pattern breaker on so many levels, spiritual, emotional, mental, like deep patterns that we think we get rid of and then we see it again. And
Yeah.
that self-heal has the capacity to break those patterns. And then to hear it languaged in a completely different sort of filter from your work is so fascinating. I love
Yeah.
it.
I would use it. I do a lot of ancestral work for women because so much of our cellular memory as women carries generations of reproductive trauma at multiple levels, which I won't go into. I don't want to language it, but everybody on who's listening will immediately get the sense of it. And so part of the healing work that I do for women is helping them to come back into present time, current reality, so that it is just them and they are not carrying
6 generations of
7,
messaging and
14. Like
right.
sometimes when I do emotion code work, I'll find 100 generations deep of grandmothers and mothers who have got reproductive trauma, and that woman is carrying it in her ovaries or in her cervix or in her womb. And so, you know, when I'm doing fertility work, I'm working at a physical level and an emotional level, a mental level, a spiritual level, and also I'm working at a financial level because sex and money, reproductive health and money are deeply connected. And so, you know, part of that ancestral work is kind of clearing the decks so that you are not manifesting the reproductive trauma of generations of women in your family. That's a part of the picture of healing fertility.
Okay, let's talk about sex and money.
Okay.
And talk more about the relationship and how you've used flower essences for those purposes, or for like financial wealth and abundance, or for reproductive liberation, and how they connect.
Well, if we think about it, you know, our base chakra is all about sex, money, tribe, family. And our sacral chakra is all about sensuality, sexuality, creativity, essence. So, you know, our reproductive organs are sitting right in that pelvic chalice between the two. So it's really important that when you're working from a mind-body medicine level, that you're integrating that work. And anyone that is on a fertility journey that chooses to go down the path of IVF is slapping down between $10,000 and $15,000 a month for a cycle. There are very few people that have the income stream sufficient to be able to do that level of financial investment without some kind of financial distress. And I have cared for couples in the past who have had a second or a third mortgage just to fund their IVF care. And they've been doing IVF for a decade. There's a massive amount of financial investment that comes with an IVF program. And I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Australia, that's out of pocket expenses. There is a small percentage of IVF programs that are allowable on our kind of government funded healthcare program. We have a similar program to Canada, but the vast majority of expenses are what we call out of pocket. So you have to fund them completely yourself. And so, you know, couples are not, so fertility is very interesting because not only are you under financial distress, but the most intimate, pleasurable, joyful part of your life, which is the sexual expression and the passion that you have as a couple, has all of a sudden become fraught with intensity. You are now trying to conceive. Sex becomes on demand. And sex is anchored with distress because it gets anchored to failure. Because you're making love with the intention of conceiving, you're timing your conception attempts either because you're going through an IVF cycle or you're doing some form of conception timing. So kind of it blows sex up in a bad way. And then for the woman, if you're not conceiving and then you're bleeding again, there are all of the layers of grief and sadness and pain and just emotional stuff.
Right.
And then that's sort of getting overlaid on top of your sexual experience. And then if you're doing IVF, often sex just becomes mechanical and kind of distressing. And, if you're dealing with masculine fertility problems where there are problems with sperm quality or potency, or if a man is struggling with erectile dysfunction or potency issues, then sex is charged. Sex is charged with emotional distress. And so the whole way of expressing it as sacred space, as deep embodied pleasure, as orgasmic potential, that can become really damaged and injured in the process. And so you can have a double whammy of this biological imperative that becomes louder and louder and more intense to conceive a baby now. Couples who want a baby, they don't want one in a couple of months. They wanted one yesterday. They're already past that threshold. And then they're having to manage that threshold of intense desire to conceive with the financial stress of paying for IVF and the sexual distress of having to basically, for a man, ejaculate on demand. Like, I'm ovulating, you have to come home and have sex with me now. Like, just feel that for a second. If you're a man, how much does that make you feel like making love with your partner? So a lot of the work that I do with couples will be recreating sex as pure pleasure, as pure intimacy, as pure connection, as pure space to be vulnerable and intimate with each other for the sake of connecting.
What flowers are your allies for that?
Oh, I love lady's mantle, pomegranate, hibiscus, apricot, fig, watermelon. Did I say pomegranate?
Mm-hmm.
Self-heal. And then I will look at, from that base of like all of the juicy fruits, the stone fruits, anything that you open up and it's just luscious. They're the flowers to think of. Any of the flowers that are luxurious and voluptuous and red, orange, bright pink, anything that vibrates at a red, at an orange level is always going to be helpful. But then it's really important to do heart healing stuff, because hearts get really injured in this process. And I think one of the pitfalls of IVF care, and I think one of the things that I feel needs to be addressed, is there is not anywhere near enough pastoral care and psychological, spiritual care for couples who are going through IVF. So you're going from one cycle that has not worked into the next cycle without ever integrating the amount of emotion that comes along the way. So it becomes like a layering of just grief and trauma over grief and trauma over grief and trauma, and you're on a treadmill of one cycle to the next, because that biological imperative is driving you forward into the next cycle.
So do you feel like your work removes those layers in between?
There's no way that I can remove the layers in between, but what I can do is I can give couples and women the skill bases and the competencies and the confidences that they need to really very deliberately allow themselves to drop into the full measure of their feelings, feel it all the way through, and have the tools and the gentleness to then integrate that. So I really encourage women, if you've been through an IVF cycle, allow yourself to sob when you get your period. Sit under the shower and howl. Like, let that grief and that disappointment and that sadness wash through your body. Use water as a vehicle to wash your body, to wash your heart, to wash your energetic body. Let yourself feel rage. Rage is important. Let yourself feel the injustice. Let yourself feel the unfairness. Let yourself feel all of the parts of you that are like, excuse my language, this is fucked. This is so fucked. I'm so enraged. I'm so angry. This is not fucking fair. Why is this happening to me again? Like, you have to feel that stuff. You have to let yourself feel that. And you have to have a permission field in your partnership that's welcome. That's what's actually real in the space. When you want a baby more than you've ever wanted anything else and it doesn't happen, truthfully, that's what comes up. And then you've got to let yourself be innocent around resenting other women who've got babies, feeling triggered by that, and having some kind of emotional skill base to put yourself back together, to be able to come into. It's so important that in that bleeding phase, you'll let yourself have the equivalent of a grieving phase, an emotional integration phase, because you want to go into the next IVF cycle. If you're choosing to go straight in, you need to go in with a space from a place of power, of optimism, of hopefulness, of we've got this. As a couple, we've got this together as a team. As a person, as a woman, I'm resourced. I'm going into this. That's part of you working with your body, and also talking to your body, connecting with your reproductive system. Like, I teach women how to be with their reproductive system as if their ovaries, their uterus, their cervix, their fallopian tubes, their vagina, their vulva are like their sisters. So everybody gets to speak. Are we all ready as a team to go into the next IVF cycle? Do we have what it takes? And sometimes one of them is going to say, you know what, I'm just not up for it. I can't do that again this month. I need time out. And honoring that, learning how to honor the body, because IVF, going to be really controversial, but IVF fundamentally is overriding the body. It's manipulating every hormonal pathway, every reproductive pathway. It's enforcing conception. And no judgment, but that's part of the entity that is IVF. And our bodies are subject to that. And we can drop into this place where we start treating our body like a machine that's to be manipulated and controlled and overridden. And for our long-term health and well-being, I really don't think that's a great thing. And that has some long-term consequences that I see in my clinical practice, having cared for people through this process. I'm now in my 30th year. Like, I'm seeing the 15-year post-IVF. I'm seeing that manifest in perimenopause and menopause. I'm seeing this journey. There are layers of not integrated energy, not integrated emotional well-being that then comes up in perimenopause and menopause. So to have a way of working with your body that is really honoring and loving and kind and gentle is really important to me. That way you get to access diagnostic procedures, medical procedures from a place of power where your kind of innate dignity and integrity as a person is retained and protected and supported.
Left turn.
Yep.
To money. The related. What are your flower allies for money and abundance and prosperity and or practices?
I love using aromatic anchoring. So I have prosperity affirmations and prayers that I say. I'm a big crystal grid person. I have crystals all over my house. My partner jokes about it all the time. I have flower elixirs that I take. I couldn't actually tell you which ones are my favorite. I would say, just off the top of my head, anything that grows in the desert and anything that's tropical. So the two extremes of plants that have evolved in austere, harsh environments.
They know how to go nuts when it rains.
Yeah, they know how to gather resources and stay empowered and stay abundant and flourish in harsh environments. And then the tropical plants are just luscious and alive, and they've just got huge energy. So, and also anything that has a really incredible big fragrance, lilies and roses, anything that feels luscious, I would think of those for being for money. But then I just think doing money integrity work, financial literacy work, like really getting grounded as a woman about financial intelligence and having your inner masculine have your own back That's really amazing. I work with an incredible financial literacy coach in Australia called Lotus Cruz. She is she's just freaking amazing. And she really teaches women and has taught me how to stay really empowered no matter what's going on for me financially. Because as a sole practitioner in my own private practice, cash flow goes up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And I still, even after 30 years, don't have all of the ways of predicting that up down. It's friggin' random.
Well, and it doesn't matter, because whatever level you're at in business, you're always going to the next level. And so even if you're on an upward trajectory, you're still pushing yourself out of your boundaries, which then pushes you into a situation of again, right? So you're like always dealing with that.
So I guess at abundance and prosperity levels, I'd always be looking at, what parts of me are in scarcity, lack, competition, fear, victim, disempowerment. What inner parts of my being, my inner children or teenagers or young adults, what aspects of me are in that space, in what I call cave woman, where it's just all about survival mode. Like, where do they need to be addressed, and what would they like? Would they like a flower essences? Would they like a flower elixir? Would they like an oil? And then looking at, what do I choose to create? What do I intend? Like holding my focus on what I choose to create out there in the world, what I want to manifest, and holding myself as the source of that I create it, I decide, it's my choice. I'm in the driver's seat of that. And then so the flower essences could be any myriad of possible permutations based upon what's up for me in that month or that week. Most of the time when I work with flower essences, I'll take a set of essences for at least 2 months at a time. And I've just been blissing out doing the flower evolution journey. I love it. I love taking that beautiful flower essence every month. And the way that I do it is I usually choose 1 or 2 flowers that I have from your pre-existing range. They're the base, because I know what I'm working on for this next 6 months. And then as each one of the flower essences in the Flower Evolution program comes on board, they get added to that base. And then by the time I'm in my 6th month, all of them are in there. So I layer them one on top of the other.
Fascinating.
So I have my base, and then the first one comes in. But because I've got the foundational base, I can feel the energetic of what that essence is doing. And then I've integrated that in that first month. And then the second month, the new essence comes in. And you've seen, I've posted my crystal grids. My flower essences are on a crystal grid on my bedside table. And I have a little bedtime ritual of taking my essences and doing my affirmations before I go to bed. And then in the morning, they're in my bathroom, and I take them at the beginning of my day. So, and then I just let them do their work.
That's so fascinating. Okay, so just to make sure I totally understand what you're saying, because I think people who are in the flower evolution, this is going to blow their minds. It blows my mind. It didn't even occur to me, because sometimes sometimes I love taking last month's and this month's together just for a little while, but it never occurred to me to layer all 6. So you're saying, let's say I'm working with truth telling. I'm working on expressing myself. So I would just commit to that for 6 months, because that's my big issue. And then we're working with California Glory, so I would add that to truth teller. And then the next month starts, now we're working with, we were working with redwood, so then we add that. And then the following month, starflower, so then you add that. And then by the end of the 6 months, you've got 6 of the major monthly flower elixirs plus your base, which is just holding you in your intentional integrity.
Yeah. And I might choose one of your elixirs as kind of like my constitutional blend.
Yes.
That fits my personality type, no matter what, without exception. That's my life path. That's my spiritual lesson to learn. Like for me, self-love, self-care is always going to be the thing. Like that's my edge. I'm always in that place of coming home to that. And that's been, that's been a big deal for me. So,
how many years have we been working on?
Infinite love for me is like my baseline. But in the context of what I was just sharing, when I first started doing it, I'm pretty sure I chose bamboo and night blooming Sirius. So they were the two essences that I felt at that point in time were what I most needed.
Mm-hmm.
So they were the base, and then all of the other essences just got layered. So the first month there were 3.
Wow.
The second month there were 4. Third month there were 5.
Wow.
Fourth month there was, etc.
Right.
Until I was taking all of them. And then because it takes so long for the next lot to arrive, like I have this beautiful month's grace where I can take all of them together for almost an extra month before my next flower evolution pack arrives.
Wow.
And then most of the time, for like the 2 years that I've been in the program, bamboo and night blooming Sirius have been my foundation.
Wow.
They have stayed. And look, I'm eclectic, so every now and then I'll take others because I have been working with them and I can, and
why not?
Because I can.
Why not?
But then they form the foundation, and then I just have a loose journaling, and because I've been working with essences for so long, I feel like I'm pretty tuned into like, oh, that's really interesting. That's a new capacity that I didn't have before. Oh, that's shifted. I'm no longer having that monkey mind chatter in my head driving me insane. That thought's not bouncing off the walls of my head every day. That's gone. So I can articulate which essences are doing what.
Okay, so you're a person who's worked with flower essences for at least 30 years.
Yeah.
You are a veteran. What do you say to people who have been taking flower essences maybe the first time, or it's their 6th month, or it's the first year, to help them become more aware of what the flower essences are actually doing? Because self-awareness, in my perspective, is a huge part of not the efficacy. They'll be effective whether you believe in them or not, or pay attention or not, or other people will see it in you even if you don't see it.
Yeah.
But I still think, though, that if we're the more self-aware we are of the changes, the more it's sort of like it's exciting. And
so I think number 1 is trust the process, darling. Trust the process. Number 2 would be patient. It will happen and it will flow, and your body, your heart, your psyche knows exactly how to get you where you need to go. You just have to, as much as you can, get out of her way. And then I'm quite a practical, grounded person. So I love to anchor plant medicines into daily rhythms. So I love ritual. So I will have aromatic body veils, or I will use the mists. I have an energetic cleansing process that I do every day. I get out of my shower, I stand naked, I do my energetic cleansing process. I put on an aromatic body veil, or I mist myself with the flower mists. That's the beginning of every single day. And I set myself up to win because in my bathroom, I have everything that I need to do that process. I'm not running around my house trying to find the tools and resources that I need. I literally have, a container.
Altar.
Yeah, I have a bathroom altar. Mm-hmm. And then I also anchor it to my meditation practice and to my, my waking up and my going to bed practice. So I have 2 essential oil diffusers in my bedroom. One is my sleeping blend that I switch on at about 8 o'clock at night, and it fills my bedroom with the most divine scent, and I walk into my bedroom when I'm ready to go to sleep and it smells beautiful. And then the next one is my meditation blend. So I wake up at 5, I get up, I pee, I brush my teeth. Before I do that, I flick on my diffuser, and by the time I get back, my room is filled with the smell of frankincense and sandalwood and rose geranium.
Wow.
And so then I do my meditation. So again, I'm resourced. My meditation blend is already pre-mixed in a bottle by that diffuser. My sleeping blend is already pre-mixed in the diffuser by that. In my kitchen, I have all of the oils that I use to give an X factor to cooking and chocolate making. They're in a little container in my kitchen cabinet. There are diffusers in every room of my home. And so I try to be super practical. My journal, my dream journal, is by my bedside in my bedside table. You know, my favorite meditation prayer books are on my bedside. My bedside table is an altar. And I don't mean that in a churchy way. I just mean that in an altar for me is your unique individual visual representation of everything that is most sacred. So for me, that's flowers, crystals. I might have seashells. I've got flower essences because they're sacred space for me. You know, my bottle of essential oils, and I try to have things beautiful and clean. It's not always like that, but I do my best. I put flower essences in my water. I carry bottles of water with me everywhere I go. I drink clean water every day, 3 liters. So flower essences go in every bottle. I have flower essences in my handbag. You call it pocketbook. It's the funniest word, pocketbook. Purse or pocketbook. Yes, so in Australia it's a handbag. So I have flower elixirs always in my handbag. I have the anointing oils in my handbag. So I have what I call a little first aid kit of flower essences and essential oils.
You never know when someone's going to need them.
Forget other people. You never know when I'm going to need it. But that being said, I have done stealth healing on more people than I can count because I've had the perfect essential oil or the perfect flower essence in my handbag at a point where somebody else needs it, and I've been able to offer that.
Mm-hmm. It's so fun to do.
It's so good.
It's so fun to do that.
Yeah. So, keeping it simple, having rituals and rhythms and routines. We're cyclic creatures as women. Our bodies respond really beautifully to cycles, to rhythm, to routine, and to leverage that in a powerful way for ourselves is really amazing.
Okay, so what do you do do you write it down? Do you just note it to yourself? What do you do when you are moving through your daily life and you're like, oh, you have that aha, like I used to do that and now I did this, or I just spoke up about that and I would never, or I just.
Depends on where I am.
Mm-hmm.
I have a journal on my computer in my clinic. I have my mobile phone. I have a note section in my mobile phone.
So you usually jot down major
I'll jot it
down.
I no longer have my bleed because I'm menopausal, but in the past I had a cycle tracker. So literally everything emotional went into my cycle tracker as a note. So anytime I noticed anything like that, that would go into my notes. And then I was able to, through the magic of technology, email that to myself and it would form a journal. I have a dream diary. I've usually got old school, whatever you call it, notebook and pen in my handbag. And I just jot stuff down. And sometimes the truth is I don't. I just notice it and I'm just like, wow, that's really interesting. How cool is that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I don't suck all the living energy out of your breath here. This is a long one. So interesting. I could talk to you all day long. Well, actually, 2 last questions, which are just sort of like frivolous questions. Since your garden and your kitchen are your church, what is like your favorite, most juicy, luscious thing to make in the kitchen? And what are, say, like 1 to 3 of your favorite flowers from your garden?
Oh, favorite flowers in my garden would have to be any rose. They're my absolute favorite flowers. I've always loved them since I was a little girl. I love Queen Anne's lace. That's one of my favorites. And blue cornflowers are my others. And one of the only roses that I'm able to grow on the Gold Coast is a tiny little intensely fragrant climbing rose called Cecile Brunner. And she has this beautiful rosy scent with a hint of clove. And she has tiny little rosebuds.
Wow.
but they open very flamboyantly into a full round, like puffball of rose petals. But the buds are just absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
And if you have one of those rose bushes growing and it's mature, you'll be able to smell the scent of roses through your whole house if you open the windows. It's divine.
Wow.
Pretty much anything that's herbal, culinary herbs, I love to grow them. I grow as many as I possibly can of every variety and ethnicity. In the kitchen, I am a big salad person. I love combining fresh leafy greens with flowers, edible flowers, and I'm a pretty kick-ass salad dressing maker. I love experimenting with different flavour combinations, different texture profiles. I make everything from scratch. I'm a cook by feel person. I don't necessarily use recipes, and if I do use recipes, I change them. One of my superpowers is I can read any recipe and I can taste it. So I can tell whether or not it's a good recipe or not by reading the ingredient list. I'll be able to oh, that's going to taste really amazing. Oh no, that's terrible. I don't want to cook that. So I love to make dressings, but I just like to make really clean, healthy, whole food. Heaps of vegetables, heaps of salad, good quality organic, biodynamic, animal protein.
What's your favorite salad dressing? Or what's the first one that pops in your mind?
I love making coconut cream, chili, cilantro, and lime juice dressing.
Wow.
For like a Thai salad.
Yummy.
Yeah,
and
super
then
yummy.
You add flower essences to it.
Oh, yeah. I add everything to it. Yeah, so
that's so great.
Yeah, so that's a dressing that I make pretty regularly, and we'll pour over, steamed salmon with a salad of leafy greens and cucumber and fresh coriander and basil.
I'm so hungry
and chili.
Now. I know. Like, please, someone please walk in the door with a plate of that.
Yum.
Okay, so in totally opposite order, because we usually do this in the beginning, but if you want to just close your eyes and go back to a time in your childhood when you played around flowers or plants or trees, and just see which memory pops in first. What were you doing? What was happening? See if you can identify a favorite flower or botanical, and then in your mind, how you would describe its personality in 3 words. And then whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and just tell us where you were and what you were up to and your favorite in your 3 words.
So the memory that pops into mind is it's high summer in Australia, probably sometime in December. I'm lying in my childhood bedroom and the windows are open, and it's very early in the morning, and I can hear the magpies and the kookaburras calling, and I can smell roses and cloves coming through my bedroom, and I can also smell lemon eucalyptus leaves. My mum planted a Cecil Brunner rose bush outside my bedroom window when I was about 8.
Wow.
And every summer was just the most beautiful little pink flowers for the whole summer. I just adored it. And in our backyard, we had these beautiful lemon gums, and they have the most beautiful scent. It's just clean, fresh, lemony deliciousness. What was the other bit?
Then how would you describe the personality of that climbing rose and or the lemon gum?
The climbing rose it's delicate, it's powerful, it's beautiful. And the lemon gum would be really strong and grounded and uplifting. I always got the feeling of happiness whenever I smelt that smell. It's a real anchor for me to childhood happiness.
Well, that's kind of full circle from the Pigspheria and the letting your inner child play. Usually how, if you've listened to the podcast before, the way that you describe your childhood favorites would describe how you bring your greatest gift into the world. So in a delicate, powerful, beautiful way. Strong, grounded, uplifting happiness.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, it sounds just like you.
It's been such a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm so happy that you're in Phoenix when I was in Phoenix. Such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, thank you for coming all the way from Australia to bless us with your wisdom.
You're welcome anytime.
Okay. Thanks again for listening to the Flowerlounge Podcast, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them, and don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.